Hi, everyone. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this conversation with Jamie Barton and Béla Fleck. My name is Elena Park, and I had the extreme pleasure of being in Nashville with both of these incredible artists and then following Jamie Barton to her hometown in Georgia to find out more about her and her roots and her family and all these things that made her the artist that we know and love today. This is the third installment in the In Song series of San Francisco Opera. We kicked it off with Janae Bridges and Penny Patti, and there's more to come, but with no further ado, I just want to welcome Jamie Barton and Béla Fleck.
Hi.
Hi. Great to see you both. Jamie, I know you're back in Atlanta at home, and Béla, you've been just playing up a storm in Colorado. So I'm so glad you could join us today.
Yeah, me too. Glad to be part of it.
Yeah, seriously, it's nice to be back in Atlanta, but it's even nicer to be on, Zoom with Béla Fleck. So, and you, Elena, too.
Well, actually, Béla, the first time Jamie and I Zoomed with you, and you brought your banjos up and you were playing licks and just talking about how you might approach it. Every time you would turn around and get your banjo, Jamie and I were like, literally, we were doing that. We were so excited.
Oh, thank you. Well, I loved it. I loved it too. Jamie blew me away. Awesome. Great experience.
Well, thank you.
Treat. Real treat.
Well, starting with that, like Jamie, I mean, when we first started talking about this in song, and you talked about your roots in bluegrass and the music that you grew up with, you immediately thought of Béla. Why Béla Fleck? I mean, he's always loomed large for me as just a towering figure of all kinds of musical exploration, but why Béla Fleck for this?
Well, quite honestly, Béla, and we talked about this a little bit, but Béla's music is just about the most perfect marriage of the two big parts of my musical life. There is the bluegrass, and then there is this progressive, innovative kind of stepping outside of the, coloring outside of the lines kind of aspect of it. And I've been listening to you for years, Béla. And so we were dreaming big. I honestly, I remember you were asking me all these questions. You were like, who would you want to, dream big? Who would you ever want to do something with? And I was like, Béla Fleck. And it was a quite literal dream come true to get to actually make music with one of, I consider you one of my musical heroes, especially, like I said, that kind of cross-pollination of classical meets bluegrass meets so much else. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you. It's good to get older.
Well, I should say a shout out to Sherry Sternberg at Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, because it was through her that we got connected to you, Béla. And the festival was just a big help in putting this together. Why did you say yes, Béla? I mean, we thought that because you have such an expansive interest in exploring all kinds of music, I mean, everything from Zakir Hussain to Edgar Meyer to, I mean, all kinds of music. But when you got this ask, and also it was, deep in COVID time, not that we're not out of COVID yet, but what intrigued you to work with Jamie and say yes to this invitation?
Well, first of all, I love taking my instrument and putting it out of its normal zone. And I think that's one of the things that I tend to be pretty good at, finding a way for it to sound normal in a place it's not expected to be. And so when I get an opportunity, it's like, I don't know how else to put it, except it was worth the effort because she was such a great singer. Just the idea of opera and banjo. I've never actually, I did a very small collaboration with Renee Fleming, but it wasn't opera material. And that's what actually intrigued me, was trying to play, be the accompanist. I love accompanying vocalists, first of all, anyway, especially with just the one banjo. For me, it's like pianists to accompany vocalists is something wonderful about having all that room and being able to be the guy to play the chords and propel the song. And but then her talent and personality made it a no-brainer. And then the fact she wanted to come to me too, it wasn't like, okay, you're going to do this classical stuff. I'm calling it classical. I don't know if I should. I don't know what I'm talking about in that world, but we also went into my world a bit. So I don't know. It was a learning experience, and it was really fun working up the arrangement, trying to figure out how to make make that, I guess it was a lute part originally. I'm not sure what it was originally. Fit the banjo and find the right key, and it was I liked the challenge. It was really fun.
Jamie, do you want to share some of what you shared with Béla as you were explaining kind of what you were thinking, and also the history with the lute and the way it was transcribed or not transcribed back in 1790, whenever that was, when the Purcell piece was written?
Totally, totally. You know, I thought of this piece, and I think of Baroque pieces a lot when I think of things that would translate really well to different instrumentation, especially what I would call bluegrass instrumentation, mainly because the way composers wrote songs at that point wasn't to say, okay, this is exactly the music, exactly as it is on the page, but more to kind of like give Nashville numbers and be like, okay, so this is this chord, this is this chord. In between that, you do what you want to, and you kind of meet up, you know, at these points, but you create the song new with every configuration of musicians that comes along. And so music for a while, I've loved that song for a long, long time. And I just thought, you know, I think that this would be a good fit with a banjo, just to be able to have this kind of instrumentation on it as a solo accompanist, rather than as a part of a group. And I'm really, really glad it worked out.
Yeah, me too. I don't know too many opera singers who would know what Nashville numbers are. Maybe people out there don't know what they are either. But it's
Explain.
shorthand for it's a shorthand for like instead of learning what key you're in or anything, because people are often playing with capos, capo, which changes the pitch of the instruments. So you're always playing sort of, instead of thinking I'm in C, you think C is 1 and the 4 chord is F. You don't have to think F anymore. You just think 4, 1, 4, 5, 6 minor, etc. And the people in Nashville who do a lot of sessions are amazing at looking at it. First of all, they can write down the chart as someone sings the song, and they're ready to record it as soon as they're done singing it, demoing it for them. And they can write these charts and read them. And then if somebody says, oh, by the way, we're changing key, you don't have to write the chords all over again. You just go, oh, okay, well, now we're in D. We went up a whole step, so now I can do my same numbers. The numbers are the same, but we had a modulation. So it's a shorthand for studio musicians. Just like I think, with classical music, a lot of the art of improvisation has slowly disappeared from it. Although people certainly improvise in huge ways with dynamics and rhythm and so forth. But in terms of like people playing their own cadenzas, it's more rare. Or back in those days when people would have a sketch that you play, and you were good enough that you could see the sketch and play. I don't know what you would call it, what Nashville numbers means in Baroque terminology. I forget what the wording is. It's not the figured bass, is it? Things like that.
Figured bass, yeah, that's it. That's totally it.
So it's like a bass line and a rough harmonic outline, and then you got to just fill it all in like a jazz musician. And that's unfortunate that jazz and classical have diverged so far, because they really were much more similar way in the old days.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Totally. And because there is that commonality between specifically like the Baroque music and the modern music that you play and stuff like that, I was just like, this feels like it would be an interesting fit. And what I loved, especially Elena, you're gonna have to forgive me, I'm just like taking over here. The banjo that you chose for the Purcell very specifically had this just hollow, beautiful, older kind of resonance to it that honestly, it was just magical to my ears.
This is a good moment to just play a clip of the rehearsal. So we showed up in Béla's front yard in early April in Nashville, and the two of them figured out the arrangement. So we have a clip of the rehearsal that prior to the next day, which was when we went into the studio and they did their recording. So let's see that first clip.
It's just such a cool sound.
The viola of the cello of the banjo family.
But I've always said that the viola is kind of the mezzo soprano of instruments anyway, so perfect.
So what do you think? How should we do it?
Maybe we just get into it and see how it goes.
Yeah.
Because
I guess we can do it a number of ways and see what we like, but I can just be just very spare, or I could be doing
the second one, honestly. Like, I like the kind of like almost a roll going in there.
Yeah. Do you want that to pull back there in that sort of cadence, you know, where when it goes, or do you want to keep it?
I think keep going,
okay.
until we get to the and the whip from out her hand.
Or we could wait till the next one to get there. We could give ourselves a passage to get there.
Yeah.
And then give it that right before we get to the end. I don't know.
I don't know. I kind of love the idea of it at the top of that section already having the banjo-ness in it.
Okay.
But it kind of building.
Okay,
do you
so
think
if
it can
I do,
build from there?
I can do, you know, instead of, I can start doing things like.
Yeah. Yeah.
There we were.
That was just really cool. Seriously.
It's intense, like some intense moment when you're trying to figure out how a piece of music's going to go, and you have to see, you know, you got to figure each other out. We had never met before that day, and you know, to make things even more complicated, you've got like a camera crew and all these strangers around, and just try to kind of make believe it's normal, you know, but it's an intense thing, and I'm intense when I'm trying to figure it out. Not everybody likes me when I'm practicing, and but I thought we had a really comfortable. We were comfortable. We were both really wanted to get something good, and we were comfortable dialoguing about it. I can remember that from looking at this.
Yeah, no, it was certainly, you know, especially with the COVID realities and just the amount of time that we had with the camera crew, we knew we kind of had a set amount of time to meet, talk about it, play with it before we literally the next day went into the studio. But I think our intensity in rehearsal actually is complementary, because I like to call it my music nerddom. You know, it's just, you know, that's when I get to be the full nerd that I actually am in real life, and to get to do that with another musician is just like it's creative, like candy.
Well, yeah, and the truth is, you know, you nerd out and you talk about what do we do here? But then when you actually do the song, you just got to go with what really happens, and a lot of times it isn't that at all. But at least you've sort of looked at it and thought about possibilities and run them through your computer brain to let it, you know, spit out something, either that or something else. Because once you start playing and doing the song, you know, really you can do it several times and let it go its different way each time, and see what you like best. But if you try to put too much to make an exact, like, perfect, oh, it's going to move exactly this much here, it's not going to move here, it's going to pick up here, it just it loses some life, because you're just trying to perfect something that you've got in your head, rather than allowing your humanity to influence each take. But
Totally.
you can always edit them later, you know, if you got a great this or that here and something else was great there, you certainly want the best parts. You want people to hear the best parts, you know, but sometimes there's a magic to a single take too, you know. So.
Yeah, absolutely. But I agree. I mean, it's like the trick is just to make like Whole Foods and be organic about it, you know, like just get together and trust that your ears and the musical brain behind the people that you're with, if you get lucky, is one that you live on really similar pages and you can just play with it, you know?
Yeah. But you know, Whole Foods is owned by Amazon now, so I'm not sure how organic
True.
that is. But
I don't know about organic. Have to
it's still organic.
Béla, were you more nervous isn't the right word, but nervous about the Purcell versus, you know, the Bury Me Beneath the Willow, Weeping Willow, which is more in your typical wheelhouse? Did you approach the Purcell with more trepidation?
Yeah, one thing that happened with the Purcell is I worked on it like a dog for like weeks, and then we finally talked about it and discovered it was not in the right key. And then I rethought the banjo whole arrangement, and then I finally decided to pick a different banjo and tune it so I could keep some of the work I had done. But aside from that, there's always more pressure in a set piece like that, where for me, playing a folk song, which basically Bury Me Beneath the Willows is, for one thing, it's in my wheelhouse, and I know how to shade and color it differently, spontaneously. I don't feel that way about the Purcell, because I was pretty much stuck to an arrangement, and I would, if the spontaneity would again be in the way it was interpreted, you know, the feel of it, the tone of it, the rubatos or lacks of them. There's plenty of creative room there, but I really wanted to get it right, because I thought if I got it to sound like as good as a great pianist would, or a lute player, then it would really speak well for the banjo, which is again I always feel like it's a poor stepchild, or like it's looked down on by a lot of people. Anytime I can play the banjo well enough for someone to say, hey, that sounds better than I ever thought, you know, then great. That's my mission, you know, because the banjo gets a lot of grief.
Well, I think we should listen to the clip of what actually happened in the studio. And I just wanted to say that, Béla, it's such a great thing that you were able to get Chuck Ainley to be our recording and mixing engineer. I mean, he's worked with George Strait and the Dixie Chicks and Lyle Lovett and everyone. And it's such a beautiful engineer in the studio.
Oh yeah, Mark Knopfler for many, many years. He does, you know, all across the musical spectrum, not just country, although he's a Nashville guy. I've known him since the 80s. And he's been doing great work the whole time.
Well, let's see that little clip. It's just the last part of the Purcell. Béla, that is just exquisite. The sound on Jamie. I mean, wow.
Well, thank Chuck. I mean, he knew what he was up to. He sure did. I haven't gotten to go to a real studio now in years. Like this whole time off, I'm just in my own little home studio with. I got some nice mics, but I don't know what I'm doing. You know, he's like the real thing. It was a real studio, and it was a little wiggy. Remember, I was in one room, Jamie was in the other. We had to use headphones. We couldn't be in the same room. Although I think we probably could be, you know, if it wasn't COVID time, it would have balanced out pretty good. So it would be really, really careful. Everybody was really being understanding of the fact that I have kids who are not vaccinated. Were we all vaccinated by then?
No.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie, you were.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that must have been too. Yeah.
Yeah, it was actually great because when we were in your yard, your kids, they were bopping around, and then you said they hadn't seen anybody in the longest time.
Yeah.
Because you all were, you know, sheltering in and staying safe. And all of a sudden, you know, we show up, and Molly McBride, my co-director, and the camera crews and the sound people, and it's just like a little fun circus.
Yeah, it was funny because I remember, you know, you think about something like, oh, would you do this song? Oh yeah, sure. You want to do? Oh, do you mind if we come and have a couple of guys film? And I'm like, sure, that's fine. Oh, can we do it at your place? Great, no problem. And then all of a sudden, you know, people just start showing up. There's like a medical professional who's testing everyone for COVID. A porta potty shows up. There's like 12 people in our front. I mean, I don't think I quite realized what was going to happen, and it was surreal. It was just surreal after being hidden away for so long. Then really fun. You know, it felt very natural at the same time as it felt quite alien after all that.
We had one comment from Lois Silverstein who said, I love the banjo in these songs so much. I was unsure how it would go, and it was perfect. I learned a lot. The two of you were stupendous. Thank you.
Oh.
Thank you, Lois. By the way, hi.
Lois, I'm wearing my Superman shirt.
Oh, you intuited she was going to write in. Well, one of the things that I thought was amazing, Béla, when we started talking about this, was it seemed like the two of you, by all rights, could have had different career paths, because your name is Béla Anton Leos Fleck, and you grew up in New York City on the Upper West Side, right? And Jamie Barton grew up in the Pocket, Georgia, steeped in music of the church and bluegrass. And yet Jamie becomes a world-renowned opera singer, and you're like the bluegrass master. So it's kind of amazing that the two of you kind of come full circle together.
It's very strange, really, but I guess it has something to do with something that's outside of your world coming and, you know, just being so different and so surprising that it sucks you in. And I never thought I would. I never could have imagined becoming like a Southern musician. I mean, I'm a New York City Upper West Side guy, but I fell in love with the sound of the banjo, and it riveted me, and I can't explain why, and it's still a big question mark that I can't explain. And I think it was maybe similar to that for you, Jamie.
Yeah, no, it really was. Whenever somebody asks me how I got into opera and classical music, especially when they hear that I come from, you know, I grew up on a farm with hippie parents, you know, and all that kind of stuff. The best answer I've figured out is teenage rebellion.
Right.
You know, I was so I lived the first, you know, however many years, teenage years of my life in this really removed kind of place, surrounded by bluegrass, surrounded by church music and that sort of thing. But classical just wasn't a part of my soundscape at all. And similar to exactly what you just said, when classical music hit my ears, I was like, whoa, okay, wait a second. This is something very different, and I really love it. And, you know, there went the path. But it was in an effort to find something to be into that wasn't anything close to what my parents had raised me on.
Right.
Which, you know, like Teenage Rebellion brought me to classical music. I am the original nerd. It's true.
Nerds are underrated. Nerds are all the best thing is done by nerds. All the greatest achievements in the human race have been by nerds. So
I
okay.
am a little biased, but I agree.
But Béla, tell
Yeah.
us about the origin of your name. I mean, you're named after Bartok, Weber, and Janáček. I mean, was your dad hoping you were going to be a classical musician or a composer or something?
Well, this is ironic, but my father was and I'm pretty sure he's gone now, although I'm not 100% sure. I'm pretty sure. My mother and my father split up when I was 1, and I never met him until I was in my 40s, and I had to go find him. It was just one of those situations. But he had tried to become an opera singer, and even went to Vienna or some where you know, and discovered to his dismay that he couldn't cut the mustard, you know, and was disappointed, and became an incredible linguist, and taught at Maryland, the University of Maryland, for many, many years. But at any rate, so he's the one who named us. Now, they had some kind of a deal. Doesn't seem fair, but if it was a boy, he would name us. If it was a girl, my mother would name us, and she drew 2 boys. So my older brother is Ludwig, and I'm Béla, you know, and so he named us after all. But it was kind of like, have you ever heard the song "A Boy Named Sue"? You know, where it's like, well, the reason I named you is that so you'd learn to fight. You know, it was kind of like that. I just got these weird names, and it gave me all of this sort of, I don't know. Sometimes I relate to Star Wars, you know, the Luke, I am your father, all this stuff, you know, all these mysteries, and they made me kind of, I had something to fight for, you know, I had something to prove my self-worth, and for some reason the banjo was my ticket. When I found it, I found something that just made me feel really happy and whole and excited, but it was also sort of a ticket out of the life I was in, which, you know, really now that I'm older, I look back and realize how fortunate and what a great life I had with, you know, in New York City. But a big part of me just wanted to get the heck out of there and go do something else and be something else. And this somehow I just found this pathway, and now, you know, I love my family. I have a great family, but it's just, you know, I guess teenage rebellion, more of the same. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, talking about fathers, we spent a lot of time with Jamie's dad, Jim Barton, when we left Béla and went to the Pocket. So we just want to share this clip of 2 moments with Jamie and her father formative experiences. So let's watch that and then we'll talk a little bit more.
He leadeth me, he leadeth me.
I got really curious about how he was singing something that sounded different from the melody of whatever hymns we were singing, but managed to match. It was a part of the music.
Where I would be, for by his hand he leadeth me.
What I remember is I knew that you weren't singing the melody. I knew that.
Yeah.
But it sounded right.
Yeah.
That's all my
part
brain
of
could comprehend.
You started harmonizing pretty quick. You caught up pretty quick.
Really?
Yeah. You were pretty quick. Yeah.
I remember back in 2014, it was the Wednesday before Father's Day, and I was going to come up and sing with you here.
Mhm.
Can't remember what we were going to sing.
Oh,
No. But I'd had a hard year. That was my the year I was going through the divorce. And I had started dating someone and had understood that I was queer. And I was terrified to talk to you about that. And so I told you. I gave you the whole spiel of, well, I'm dating someone. I really like them. Not using any pronouns to avoid the reveal that it was a woman. And then I said, you know, I think the only thing that might throw you is that it's a woman. And it didn't take more than a split second for you to say, well, I love you. Ain't nothing ever going to change that.
Nope. That's the way it is.
Jamie, I get so emotional when I see you with your dad. And he's the master of like, nope. And he says like worlds in a syllable.
Yeah. I mean, I'm what you guys chose to edit out for the episode of End Song is the fact that I was in tears probably directly after saying that last bit, you know, and talking with Dad. I've got the best family, man. I just do. My mom and my dad, and my mom doesn't make an appearance in this at all, unfortunately. But to have two parents who not only encouraged me from day one of me going, you know, I think I want to be an opera singer, you know, graduating high school in Armurchie, Georgia, and knowing that I wanted to go into music and thinking, well, maybe vocal performance, and choosing to go to a college where I didn't really get much of a scholarship. And I came from a really financially disadvantaged family, and to have two parents who were like, okay, great, let's figure it out. We'll take on some of the loans, you know, let's figure it out and give you a chance. Like that, number one, amazing. Number two, especially I think as a Southerner, and a Southerner who comes from Christian family members, to have the experience of realizing later in life that I'm bisexual, and knowing that I'm going to have to tell my parents at some point, and sharing it with Dad. I was nervous, not because I thought that there was any chance that he would reject me. I knew that he would love me. I knew that it would be an okay thing, but what I didn't know was how long that would take. And my dad, I'm a little teary right now. My dad, I love him more than any other man on earth. You know, he is.
Darn.
Yeah. Yeah, no, he is just an extraordinary human in every way, and has given me nothing but unconditional love. And in that moment, when I told him, like I said on the video, it took him no time to turn around and say, well, I love you. Ain't nothing going to change that. And I think when he said that, I started like the Charlie Brown tears, like they just started shooting out of my face. But growing up in the 90s in the South, I saw how bad it could be when kids came out to their parents. And even now, like I give to a charity here in Atlanta. It's called Lost and Found. It is specifically a homeless shelter for LGBTQ youth, because there is such a problem in the South of kids being kicked out of their homes when they come out to their parents. And the fact that just, I mean, it wasn't even, I didn't have to worry about that. I didn't have to worry about him rejecting me. And he just turned around in 1 second and said, well, I love you, and there's nothing that's going to change that. I'm an incredibly lucky woman in so many regards. And that is one of the big ones to me on a personal level.
I think Molly and I had this whole line of questioning for your dad, like, are you shocked you became an opera singer? Did you think the dreams were improbable? And I'm the daughter of immigrant parents who want very practical things so that you're stable and successful. And then after I spent a little time with him, I'm like, none of this was surprising. Anything you wanted to do, he believed in you. And so like, there was no line of questioning. Were you surprised she's become one of the most glorious opera singers on the planet? Nope.
He really is a man of few words sometimes.
But I think it's given you this base to be really brave in terms of who you are, what you want to express, your activism. One of the things in the video is the moment where you were able to wave the gay pride flag on the last night of the proms and caused glorious response and also an uproar, but you're happy, proud to do it. And I'm meeting your family because I met other family members. I can see where that comes from, that base.
Yeah, like you guys captured in the video, and us just sitting out on my Nana and Gramps' porch. It's easy to be brave when you have that love and support behind you. And I just do. I'm one of the lucky ones. I'm really, when it comes to a setup of family, we might have gone hungry. We might have had to make our clothes. We might have grown up in a trailer, but I never wanted for anything that was really, truly important, and that's extraordinary, honestly.
Béla, it was wonderful to be around Abigail, who joined Jamie and you for a song on the porch, and to see your little boys running around. I read that your grandfather was the one who gave you the banjo. Was he a big music fan, or was it just by fate that it landed in your hands and then you went on this path?
He ran a car wash in Queens, and then retired up to Peekskill, New York, and he liked to go to garage sales on the weekends. And I had heard the banjo when I was 5 or 6 years old, actually at his house on watching the Beverly Hillbillies on TV. And watching TV was still a big deal back then. TVs weren't all that, that new. And them letting us watch their TV in my grandparents' room was a big deal. And this came on, and it kind of blew me away. But I never really told anybody about it because it was kind of weird. Like my brother was there, and I said, "Did you hear that?" And then it was Earl Scruggs playing the banjo, like the guy who started this whole 3-finger thing. He was like a god of the banjo, and I was just blown away. And my brother was like, "No, I didn't hear anything," And I said, well, wait till the end of the show and it'll come back. And it came back on, and then there it was again. I said, there's that sound. What is that? And he said, I don't know, I guess it's okay. But it stayed with me. And from then on, I was banjo aware, but I never told anybody because I didn't think anybody could actually ever play the thing. It seemed impossible that anybody could actually play, because I never seen anybody do it. But then by the time I got to high school, which would have been, 10 years later, I got a guitar and I did some folk stuff. And I never really told anybody about my banjo love. And then all of a sudden, because I played the guitar, my grandfather went to the garage sales, saw a banjo, Dueling Banjos was out. I don't know if it was because of that, but he got it, and I came up to visit in Peekskill, and he said, "Oh, I got this. Maybe you'd like it." $50 at a garage sale, and I was like, would I like it? And it just dropped into my lap like literally the day before I started high school at the Music and Art High School, which is like the Fame School, which I had gotten in playing Here Comes the Sun on the guitar well enough for them to think that they could teach me a real instrument, which was going to be French horn, which I never could learn. And at any rate, I'm babbling here, but yeah, my grandfather. The short, your father's answer would be, did your grandfather give you the banjo? I would say, yep.
Do you still play the guitar, Béla?
Not much. It's funny though. Every time I pick it up, it's like I'm better than I was 5 years ago. The last time I picked it up, just from all of the years of playing music and playing the banjo, which is not technically, the technique isn't that different, but just it seems to. I play it less and less. I played it a lot in the early years, but yeah, there's a lot of guitar players, and I just find my expression. But I write tunes on it. Like I get it out and write something because I don't know it as well as I know the banjo. I'm more likely to follow my ear and find a musical idea than I am to. Where with the banjo, I kind of know it so well, it's a little harder to just sort of dig around and see what pops up. Sometimes I tell people, if you want to write something, go get an instrument you don't know how to play, and then you'll follow your ear. Your ear will lead you to find harmony and melody that you like, and you won't go, oh, I can't do that, that's too simple, or your hands won't go into your familiar patterns. You can't. You have to follow your ear. So I use guitar and sometimes piano or mandolin for those kinds of things, but banjo is my love, and that's what I play.
So you're coming on to the first original Bluegrass release of your own music in 20 years, is that right?
Something like that, yeah.
It's coming out in September, and Ann Adair wrote, I just love this so much. I'm a bassoonist and huge opera nerd, but started studying clawhammer style banjo during the pandemic and have really been enjoying it. Love the new Charm School track, Béla. I got turned on to your music through Paul Hansen and always love you, Jamie. This new album that's coming out, I listened to that Charm School track, you and Chris Seeley and Billy Strings.
Yeah,
it kind of blew my mind. It's like new synapses formed. I mean, it's an 8-minute track and it's just extraordinary. So 20 years, why 20 years and what can we expect on this album that's coming out soon?
Well, it's funny. I always thought I was underachieving whenever I made a bluegrass album in the past. So I would be like, okay, my last record for Rounder Records in like 1988, I did a bluegrass record. It turned out to be one of the best things, I've ever done in people's opinions, called Drive. And it was with a classic lineup of musicians that were all just coming into their glory around then. And then in 1999, I believe it was, I made another record with those same musicians, and also Earl Scruggs guested. And then all these years went by where I was playing, with Chick Corea, with the Flecktones, with the Zakir Hussain, and doing things where the banjo was really outside of its idiom. But meanwhile, my brain is collecting ideas for the day I would do it again. And I was starting to have a backlog of tunes I had written that just weren't right for these more progressive situations. And but one of the problems is one of the main people in that group, a guy named Tony Rice, was really not able to play. He was losing his ability to play. He had a lot of arm problems, and he eventually had to kind of drop out. And for me, he was one of the main guys that made me want to play bluegrass for many, many years. If I could play with Tony Rice, I would drop anything to do it. Not that the other musicians weren't equally wonderful, but he completed the picture, and he's one of those people that would bring things out of you that nobody else could do. So I was waiting and waiting, thinking maybe somehow he would come back around or get well, or we'd find a way to play together again. And then if I couldn't have him, I didn't really want to do it. And then he got to a point where it was clear he was not going to be playing anymore. And I just started thinking about it. Actually, it was right during the pandemic. It was just before the pandemic. One of our children, I have a 3-year-old now and an 8-year-old, and the 3-year-old had some severe health problems that were very, very frightening, that we actually almost lost him. And for some reason, after that happened, and everything was going to be okay, I just felt myself so compelled to go and make this record. It was no real good reason, but I was like a life or death thing. I just really wanted to do this music and reconnect with all these people from my bluegrass community. this is a long answer, but at any rate, and I started calling people up, and I decided to start to experience the new new musicians in bluegrass more, and not just go with that same crew minus Tony Rice, but use those people if they wanted to, and they did, and new people like Chris Thiele, who's now not really a new people anymore. Billy Strings is a pretty new people, but some of the people who had come up in these years while I hadn't been playing bluegrass, Sierra Hull, for instance, a monstrous mandolin talent, and Michael Cleveland, who's a blind and an incredible fiddle player. And I started recording, and pretty soon more and more people occurred to me that I really wanted to play with. Old friends like David Grisman and my teacher Tony Trischka, and soon it was a double album. And it all got recorded just before the pandemic shut everything down. And so all during the pandemic, I was I couldn't go play music with anybody, but I could go down to the basement and work on editing and mixing, with my favorite musicians of that world. And so this track, Charm School, which was just released yesterday, they just announced the record yesterday, is with Billy and Chris Thiele, and we had a session where we recorded, I guess, 3 pieces with that group, and then there's a whole lot of other sessions with a lot of other people, and they're all excellent. I mean, it sounds like I'm saying that about me. I'm really saying it about them. Like the people that came in and played their hearts out, and some of it was very challenging. And if you listen to Charm School, it's on the more challenging side and more free improvising side, but there's also some very traditional sounding stuff. Bluegrass is a lot of different things today. It's not one thing. It's a very wide topic, and so this record covers a lot of the different places in it.
I saw that Sierra Hull said working with you was like working with Yoda. Speaking of Star Wars. Speaking of Tony Rice, when you and Jamie were first talking about Bury Me Beneath the Weeping Willow, it was the Ricky Skaggs Tony Rice version that you had Jamie listen to.
Yeah.
Can you talk about why that version? And then we have a clip of you and Jamie in the studio doing Bury Me that we want to share, but talk about working on that song together.
Did you know that version, Jamie, before we met? Had you already heard Tony?
No, I knew a couple of different versions, but I had never actually listened to the Skaggs Rice version.
Yeah, it's very stark and beautiful. It's just like, there's such a beauty to that starkness. No one's over singing. It's just very spare. And I've been perfectly in tune. I happen to know they recorded that record in either a day or 2 at the most. It was just, the whole album, it was just the 2 of them, and they may have thought they were underachieving. They made one of the great records of all time, in my opinion, Skaggs and Rice. It's just simple and pure and beautiful. And that song can either be a dumb song or it can be a great song, depending on, how you interpret it and what you make of it, like your figured chords or anything. You have to take a traditional song and embody it, and you certainly did.
Thank you. It's funny, you were saying with the Purcell earlier that was the one that you were a little nervous about. And for me, hands down, it was Bury Me. Because while I did come from a place where I sang bluegrass for the formative years of my life, it's been a very long time. And the one thing I did not want to do was to get in there and sound like Leontine Price. Like, not that Leontine, we love you, but we love you, Leontine, but I didn't want to sound like an opera singer who was struggling to sing the style. And the simplicity of what we ended up coming up with, I think really, really added to just this beautiful, delicate kind of presentation of it. A very vulnerable kind of sound to it, I think.
I think first of all, you are an opera singer, so why shouldn't you sound like one? And why would that be bad? Because you got to be yourself. But I think you found a way to sing a song that is very honest and had that. It's not stark like those guys with their sort of chiseled simplicity. It was very you, and that's the best thing you can do in any musical situation, is be yourself. That's what makes this. If you want Skaggs and Rice, go hear them. If you want to hear Jamie Barton sing it like you sing it, and I think you did great. It's awesome. I'm just thrilled.
Thank you. I love it, and I'm hoping for the day that we get to form a band and make an album together.
Well, we're getting questions about that from the audience, so we'll come back to that. But let's see a little bit of Bury Me. and then talk about that. And Béla, when we were working with the editor, Steve Majorca was working with all the footage. I love watching you play in your solo moments. And then the way that you look over at Jamie and you hold the space for her. I just love watching this. So anyway, here's the clip of Bury Me.
Tomorrow was our wedding day. Oh God, where can she be? She's gone a-courting with another and no longer cares for me. Oh, bury me beneath the willow under the weeping willow tree, so she will know where I am sleeping and perhaps will weep for me.
I always think I just look so weird when I'm playing. I look like so miserable and like twitchy and bizarre, you know. I don't think I look like that as much in normal life, but when I'm playing, I'm just such an intense freak about nerd. Like every single note is so important to me, and I can't control them all. And I'm like, oh, I'm trying to do this so good, and I can't. And it's life.
I love
But,
watching you play, and I love the intensity. And during the nerd conversation earlier, both Lois of Lois and Clark and Anna there were they're all talking about the great thing about being nerds and going deeply into something. I just want to say that one of the questions is from Will Berger, who Jamie and I know well, the writer and Met opera commentator. And he asks, was there a piece of music, song or aria, or anything that you discussed working on together, but didn't get around to? What was the, quote, outtake? And you know, we have this plot, the two of you getting back in the studio and then going on the road, or maybe San Francisco Opera and Hardly Strictly Bluegrass, like joining forces and presenting you in a program. So what didn't you get to, or what's on your wish list?
Oh man. I mean, a broad question, man. I mean, from the classical side of things, there's so much like John Dowland music, like once again, early Baroque stuff. But then I also think of like Jake Heggie has some things that I think would be really, really interesting with different instrumentation. And then like, I know we were going back and forth on songs, and I know I had mentioned Long Black Veil, because I kind of love the murder ballad kind of thing anyway. No, there was a lot. I will say the outtake that I'm very sad that I don't have a copy of is getting to sing with Abigail when we did a little
well, you can, if you're nice, I'm sure Steve the editor will oblige. Actually, it was a lovely take, so we should have it anyway.
It was a version of the same song. She sang the I guess she sang the Skaggs high harmony to it, because I think she probably knows some other folk versions of it from a different world, different time. But because she's more of a traditionalist than I am, she's an old time player, you know, and singer. I mean, I think there's so many things you can do once you just decide to do something. I'm just glad that we did this at a level. I mean, I think this is like release worthy. Like, I'd be proud for people to hear it, and that means we've got 2 tracks for something. If there's ever an album, people are making albums. I still do. But yeah, thinking of things that are challenging in fun ways for both of us, you know, things that you wouldn't normally get to do, or things that, or sharing the discomfort, you know, nicely. So I got to learn a bunch of these accompaniment parts and find my way to make them my own. And then you have to learn some cool, weird trad stuff that you never, you know, would have had to do or something. But it's got to be stuff that means something to you, that you can get behind and really love.
Yeah.
And there's a question from Jen Hughes for Béla. How much opera music did you study up on before you met up with Jamie for that meeting in your yard? Or were you just focused on those particular pieces that you played and sang together?
Yeah, I don't know much of anything about opera, frankly. And I mean, one guy who's always talked to me about opera is Branford Marsalis. I remember back in the day when there were record stores, he'd come to Nashville and we were friends a bit. And I said, hey, want to get together and go, have a meal? No, let's go to the record store. And he'd go straight to the opera section and he would just say, oh, this, that he just walk out with all this stuff. And he just loved it. And but I don't know much about it. I'm just trying to make good music as best as I can. There's a lot, I mean, I don't know that much about Indian music, and I get to play with Zakir Hussain, and he's the master. And so I just have to do my best to like make good music, whatever that is, without that knowledge base that I have in other forms of music. It's kind of like with Chick Corea, it's like I'm not a jazz musician, but I play one on TV. I'm playing with the greatest jazz pianist, one of the greats of all time, and here I am, like I don't know what I'm doing. So there's a certain unconscious where you grab a bunch of the talent of the person you're playing with, you osmose it, and you let them influence you. And if you just can relax and let it happen, you can get pretty close where at least it's good music. And maybe you don't know. Like when Bluegrass, I would be able to tell you how, every banjo player played this tune from, Earl on to now. I might be able to say, well, he did the pull off this way, or he played the melody this way, or he used the backward rolls, or he stayed in the high register, and we would debate about it. And I can't do that in most of the like when I did my African project. I don't know. I'm no expert. I just love music and I love interacting with people and trying to like soak up their trip as best as can be done, and do as much work as I can to be prepared, so that it's possible that it could turn out well. It takes a lot of work.
It's great that your brother did the documentary on you with the Africa project, so that people can.
Yeah, it was, and it was great that we had the last cut too, because there's plenty of stuff on that Africa trip where I didn't sound that great, but by the time we got the great stuff, there was more than enough for a great recording and movie that showed what we hoped for, a really successful collaboration. If somebody else had cut it together, it might not have looked so successful, but we knew, it was luck. It's all relative to, anyway.
Well, Jen Hughes thinks, first of all, she wants to know when she can see you collaborate live in the future. And she thinks a nice gospel set with opera mixed in would be nice. So already your program is taking shape.
Mm-hmm.
Jamie, do you think this is I know you got some other things up your sleeve. Do you think this is something you're going to be exploring while, satisfying your opera fans?
Well, I certainly hope so. I really do. This is something that has been in the back of my brain for a long time of, man, if I get lucky enough, I would love to do this kind of thing. Yeah. And hilariously enough, Béla, I'm really excited to get this album of y'all's, and I'm definitely going to have to go listen to the track, because on Sunday, guess who's getting to sing with Chris Thile?
Yay! Yeah. What do you guys do?
So I'm just, we're doing this pop-up concert in Brooklyn, where I'm doing a set of classical stuff, and there are a whole bunch of other musicians. It's kind of a variety show kind of thing. And then at the end, we were chatting today about it. We're going to be doing the Sarah Jaraz hit and Chris Thile version of "The Tourist" by Radiohead, okay. Which I think is, I love that cover of it, and so I'm excited about it. But
you're gonna love playing with him, and he's gonna love playing with you. And please give him my best. I love. He's amazing. He's awesome.
I for sure will. I really, really will. And Elena, just to like answer your question, I am just full on putting it out in the universe that if more of this stuff comes along, I'm there with bells on. I would love to, not only just for my own, like, I want to do this kind of thing, but also I think it's really important for artists to stretch in whatever direction they really want to stretch in, because I think that, quite honestly, that opens up the doors for new audience members, whether they be opera audience, bluegrass, or whatever, to feel welcome and to feel heard in their own musical tastes. So that for me is just that's the goal at the end of the day. Yeah, I want to sing in all these places, I want to sing all these pieces, but at the end of the day, I really just want to create a couple of hours for audience members to have a moment where they feel catharsis or connection in whatever way I can. And if being able to do more of this will enable that, then I'm here for that.
Yeah, well, you could just let it develop. You got to start here. You could do some stuff with Chris. You could maybe do an album with a variety of people that where you interact in this world, or we could get back together and come up with a couple more songs. And there's no hurry. You can build a record over a course of years and have it naturally grow, or presentation, or you might have an opportunity where somebody asks you to curate something and you can bring in some of the people you're interested in. That may lead to some more cool tracks that you could see fit. You just let it grow and let it develop. And yeah.
I do love that, with this series that Matthew Shilvak, who runs San Francisco Opera, and Greg Hinkle have put together. One of the Janae's version had spirituals, and Pene Pati's had Samoan song, and then here there's no boundary between classical and bluegrass. It's just good music. We have a question from Natalie Brender. She says it's a grandiose question, so get ready. What's at stake for the future of opera and classical music in showing that collaborations such as this are possible and that opera people can cross musical boundaries?
Oh man,
I think that's for you.
I have been endlessly inspired by the brains that cross genres, to begin with Béla, like we talked about at the beginning. You've always been a part of what keeps my brain just going, ooh, what's next? What's next? What's there? And I know within classical music, we spend so long going through school, going through training, spending years, sometimes decades, trying to hone the craft so that we're singing in the correct style with the correct technique. And it's a real athletic kind of thing. It is both, a brain focus as well as a coordination in a way that just is different from other things. But that being said, it's not superior. It's just another mode of expression that is really beautiful and really profound, alongside other modes of expression that are also really beautiful and really profound. Some people dive headfirst into classical music, and that's where they feel their ears and their heartstrings are really attached. Some people dive into bluegrass or, any variety. I guess the big answer for me is just that I don't want there to be this idea that classical music is somehow better than others, because I don't think it is. I think it's incredible. But I also think that there are so many other ways of expression and telling stories that are just phenomenal. And if I get lucky enough to step outside of the normal opera bounds and to be able to create music and tell stories in different ways, then I think I'm made better as an artist. And I have to believe also that, once again, this connects with other people. And if I connect with more people, then isn't that the point? That's, I don't know, that's kind of where I go with that. But
yeah. Well, I can guarantee you that the people that love bluegrass think it's, just as good as the people that love opera think opera is good. It moves them, and it's their music, and they, they're passionate about it. And there's that same thing where somebody will say, oh, you're not doing it. You're playing with other people, doing all this stuff. You're not really doing bluegrass anymore. And it's not, I wish you would. I wish you wouldn't do all that other stuff, and everyone's got to make their own choice. But I'll tell you this, these musics are not like, superstars of the music are not billionaires, and you do it for love. And if you have a way that you can open up and like reach outside of your music and find people outside of your world that can fall in love with your music too, that wouldn't have heard it before, well, that's a great thing, because, you know, if you want to keep doing it your whole life, you need people to like it. You need ears. So I figure whenever I get to play with people outside of my world that don't know me, or, you know, or don't have they don't have that understanding of the banjo, what it can and can't do, and I can change their perception, that's just a great gift to me when I go. So going to India and playing with Zakir, you know, one of the greatest musicians of India, you know, a whole bunch of people who never heard the banjo got to hear it. And, you know, and if anybody is going to say, hey, you should be playing bluegrass, I'm like, hey man, you don't know what I just got to experience, you know, what a trip it was to go there, and how I wouldn't give it up for anything, the experiences that I've gotten to have outside of bluegrass. But that said, I wouldn't give up bluegrass either. I mean, it's the center, it'll always be the center of what I do, whether I like it or not. You know, it's so inside of me. It's such a big part of me that when I inevitably am bringing bluegrass to, you know, to Purcell or to India or to Chick Corea. I'm bringing, and maybe they're playing with me because that's something new to them. But, you know, be you be you, I'll be me. And I also understand the people that are such purists that are like, no, you know, that's not what I like about bluegrass. What I like about bluegrass is that earthy, honest, old-fashioned sound, and this new stuff is not what I signed on for when I fell in love with bluegrass. I understand that, and they have a right to. You know, they have a right to like what they like and love what they like.
And Béla, I have one question, just getting to observe you at work and the rigor with which you like approach the work, the practice, and you're such a perfectionist. When you're playing live, are you more liberated, and because you don't have to have it be perfect because you're in the moment and there's something happening and it's the energy of the thing? Because just watching you work really was a treat for me. But I just wonder, can you just relax in the live?
You just said it. The fact that you can't do it again at a live show is liberating. You have to embrace everything that happens. And as Bobby McFerrin once said, the secret to improvising is don't stop and don't look back. And so I have both of those personalities. I have that like picky nerd that's gonna like beat that, you know, one little section of the song 25 times to try and get it as good as I can. And then I have that side that lets it all go and just goes for it and lets the chips fall where they may, and embraces whatever happened, whether it was what I hoped had happened or not. And in fact, when you improvise, it's kind of, have you ever heard of like how in comedy, you can never, when you do an improv comedy and someone throws out a line, you can never go, oh, well, that's not a good line. You always have to embrace whatever is thrown at you to do good improv comedy. It's you can't be critical. You can't be critical during the moment. And that's the way improvising and playing music is live for me. It's no time to be critical. You can be critical some other time. Now it's time for love and openness and embracing whatever everyone else played and sang, and responding to it in real time. And that's the art of that. And I like doing both.
Well, we're coming on to the end of our time, sadly. And thanks for answering the question, because I just love seeing both. And one of my namesake, Elena Park, whom your wife, your partner knows, said that she's seen you perform more than anybody else, any other musician. She's a fiddler. So I hope to hear you live. And I see on your website that you're like hitting the road and touring all over the place. So hopefully sooner rather than later, I can see you with your live band. And Jamie, you're going to be in the Bay Area soon for San Francisco Opera with another trailblazer, Unsun Kim. Can you tell us about what's coming up?
Absolutely, absolutely. I am just delighted that we're getting the band back together. The Rusalka band of Unsun and Rachel Willis Sorensen. We were there, gosh, was it 2018? We were there, I think, in the summer doing Rusalka. And San Francisco is so lucky to have Unsun Kim coming into the house to be the new music director. And so they called me and Rachel and said, hey, y'all want to come in and do this gala for us to start the year off? And we said, heck yeah. So we get to be back together. Oh gosh, I cannot wait to sing with the orchestra again. The SFO orchestra is just one of my favorite bands to sing with, hands down. So it's just going to be a love fest with a lot of very loud and very, very pretty hollering happening. And I'm really excited about it.
I've never got
That's
to play with
September
them.
10th. And then
I was just going to say I've never gotten to play with them, but my wife has. Abigail has gotten to work with MTT in China, and yeah. Mhm.
Okay, so the San Francisco Symphony is who she worked with then.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. No, this is the opera orchestra.
Oh, sorry.
There's probably
Never
some crossover there,
we're
but
across the
I actually
street. Yeah.
across the street, and I actually haven't worked with the symphony yet. So,
Okay. Well, apparently
yeah,
you're a great fan too, but I don't think it's announced yet, and I can't say where exactly or what, but I do expect to be in San Francisco myself at the end of September for a large outdoor event that I cannot
Divulge at this moment.
divulge
Well,
at
check
this
your
moment.
website.
Yeah, it should
And
be announced pretty soon.
and the Jamie concert that she's doing on September 10th is going to be streamed live to the ballpark. Is it the
yeah, from
ballpark?
what I've been told. Yeah.
Yeah. Super exciting.
I
Have you ever
expect
sung
to watch. Huh?
sorry, have you ever sung the national anthem at a ball game?
I haven't. I used to joke for years that my family wouldn't think that I had actually made it until I sang the national anthem at a Braves game, but no, it hasn't happened yet.
Well, our
Yes,
friend,
in the
your friend,
future.
Joyce DiDonato, she got to sing the national anthem at the World Series. So maybe it's just a matter of time, Jamie. Oh, and Renee sang it at the Super Bowl.
Super Bowl, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, in that fabulous Vera Wang dress. Oh my gosh. But
Well, thanks to both of you for being so generous with your time in Nashville, and then also Jamie in Georgia. And just want to give a shout out again to Sherry Sternberg and Hardly Strictly Bluegrass for helping broker this magical pairing. And Carolyn Dixon Dahl Fund, the Creative Edge Fund that makes these kinds of projects possible. So to everyone who hasn't streamed it yet, I only played like little snippets of the 2 songs that they did in full, and there's a lot more in there. So please watch the feature, tell your friends, and then stay tuned for the album, which is coming at some point between these 2.
hopefully, wishes.
Yeah, well, it's definitely possible. Thanks to Elena for having me, and Jamie, what a treat. What a treat. I hope we get to do a lot of stuff over the coming years. It'll be really fun.
Yeah, and hey, maybe the next time we see each other, it'll be okay to hug. That'd be
Yeah,
nice.
that would be nice. Yeah, I think it's moving in that direction. We got a little more to get through here. It's moving that way. Thank goodness.
Well, definitely stay safe in your travels with your tours, and thank you again, seriously, for taking on an opera singer in the middle of a pandemic. It was just so much fun. It was really a highlight of the last year and a half.
I was just joking. Sorry, that's super spreader. The one thing you shouldn't collaborate with during a pandemic is.
All right. Well, take care.
Okay. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks, Katie.
Bye.
Bye.